Hey there, Scout Campers. It's Scouty Steve here. And if you take a look at what behind me, you might be able to tell today we're going to be going over some fire safety and how to properly make fires. But first, what did the ancient Egyptians use fire for? Well, hieroglyphs depicted the Egyptians using fire for just about everything. So anywhere from cooking food to building tools, performing religious ceremonies, and lighting their homes and temples. To make fires, they used fire from friction technique, where you create friction with drilling or sawing sticks to spark a flame. But what really baffled archaeologists was not how they made fire, but rather the fact that no torches or lamps were depicted in ancient drawings. They later discovered why, because Egyptians had their own method for harnessing flame for lighting, floating wicks. Now no, these were not actually floating flames, rather a bowl filled with castor bean oil, with wicks made from vegetable fibers afloat on top of the oil on the surface, that they would then set ablaze. Now fire, like water, was another important symbol of life for the ancient Egyptians, because its playful flames seemed to have a mind of its own. Which brings us to today's segment on fire safety. Now there's three things you need for a fire. Oxygen, and that's pretty easy unless you're underwater or up really high in the mountains. Oxygen is really easy to come by, it's all around us. The second thing you need for a fire is fuel, and we'll get to that in a second. It's down there, you can't really see it right now, but fuel could be like fire or paper, anything to get the fire going. The last thing you need, which is what I'm gonna go over with all this stuff here, is heat. Now heat, it could be from friction, it could be from a lighter. Anything that produces heat can be used to make a fire. So the first thing, a lot of you, I personally have never used this. It might be very good might be hard if you've never seen this before. This is called a fire bow. Now what you would do, if I can find the block that's right here. So I'm very bad at using this. I've never used one. But what you would do is you'd place this on here and hold it still, and you would move the bow back and forth really fast on the ground, not on your leg. You don't want to make a fire on your leg. But you move it back and forth really fast, and it would create friction by the little stick spinning back and forth on the wood. Eventually it would create smoke, heat. You have to do it really fast though. It's more of a survival situation style tool. On the show Survivor Man, he uses these a lot. These aren't something you commonly use to make fires because it's really hard and it takes a lot of time to actually do it. So the next item you guys have probably seen, lighters and matches. So lighters are really quick and easy. They're filled with fuel inside the little container. It's a smaller one, there's some bigger ones like this. It's lit, you just can't see the flame. That's not lighting. Don't use a lighter without any fuel in it, that's bad. But yeah, this one, so the fuel is inside the little lighter canister. Just put it against the paper or the wood you're trying to start the fire with, and that should light. Matches, pretty easy too. There's some waterproof ones in case it's raining. That'll make it so make the fire easier to start if your matches do get wet. So with matches, you just take the match, you put it on the side of the matchbox that has like the sparker on it. You just go ahead. Away from you, you don't want to, similar to knife safety, you don't want to start a fire towards you. Light a match like that. So another tool you guys might see is flint and steel. So there's different types of it. This is a brick, and you scrape it on both sides to get some of the material down, the magnesium. You scrape it with the magnesium, gets the shavings on there, and then you spark it. This one is my favorite. As you can see, it's really missing a lot of the material on it. You just go back and forth on it and start this fire, so I'll see if I can get it for you guys. It's sort of hard to see, but the sparks to this direction. There we go. So flint and steel, you strike it. You can either use the little tool that comes with it, or a knife if you have one, if you properly can use the knife, and you can start the fire that way, the flint and steel. There's also some older types of flint and steel. One of them would be this. So it's a striker, and this is a piece of flint. So what you would do, I apologize, I'm bad at this, but you would strike it on here. It's hard to see, but there are sparks coming off. It doesn't make that much as sparks as the newer stuff does, but this is what they would use. It's just a metal ring and you strike it on here and light the spark. So there's some other cool types of way to start the fire that you probably haven't seen before. This one, so we have steel wool right here and a 9-volt battery. So you gotta be really careful when you use this, because the moment the 9-volt battery touches the steel wool, it starts to ignite really fast and it gets really hot. So I'll just do it quickly. So I'll get closer so you guys can see it, if it wants to start. So unfortunately it's not starting, but what would end up happening is the steel wool would light up, start burning around it, and it would actually make it really hot and easy to start the fire with. And one of the last things that is probably you would never use in a fire, but it's possible to do it, it's a magnifying glass. So you would shine it. I have never been successfully able to start a fire with magnifying glass, but you would shine it, pointing the light into where you want to start the fire. The light would come to the magnifying glass and it would be magnified to a specific point on the paper or the wood that you're trying to light on fire. And it would eventually ignite it because it would get super hot in that one little spot. If it's cloudy out, like over here, if you have some tree cover, it's really hard because you need direct sunlight to actually start the fire. So the next thing we'll go over is the types of fuel that you would use to start a fire with. So besides heat and oxygen, the next thing you need is fuel. So people usually think of fuel, sticks, wood, anything that's wooden. That's probably the first thing you'll think of when it comes to fuel. But there's actually different types and sizes of fuel that you can use to actually start your fire. So the smallest stuff you'll need is the tinder. So that can be anywhere from really tiny sticks to stuff like newspaper. So newspaper, cardboard, any paper stuff is really good to start a fire. If you have old newspapers, it's a good fire starter. You put it in the middle of your fire, light it. It's easier to light than taking a big log, trying to light that right away. So this will burn quicker, easier, and can start making your fire bigger. Some other types of tinder you might have in your house, anywhere from cotton balls, toilet paper, paper towels, dryer lint. Anything like that is really good to start your fire with. People use pine needles and leaves. Those are okay. You only really want to use those if you have nothing else, because pine needles and leaves, dry leaves especially, have the tendency to, after they light, they can go up in the air. So if there's anything around it, they might more easily catch if you have the flaming, burning leaves just coming up from the fire. So the second type of fuel that you'll start your fire with it's called kindling. So that's any of the bigger sticks like this. You can easily break this up, snap it, and start your fire that way. So you might have your kindling, and you start building up the fire around it with, you might have your tinder, you might start building up your fire around it with a small piece of wood, the kindling. So yeah, anything small, easily breakable, not too big, is really good kindling. You can start the fire that way. Now the last type of fuel, the size fuel you have, is the logs. So if you cut down a tree, there's the big splits of wood you can have. Bigger sticks like this, anything that's big around you can't easily break, or if it's really long, that could be good logs, good big wood, big fuel, big logs to use. So you'd have all three of those components of size fuel to actually make your fire with. Now there's actually three main styles of fire, like the logs you build up, that you can actually make. So there's a teepee, a log cabin, and a lean-to. So I'll just do a small example of each of them. So a lean-to, I'll start off with the log cabin. If you guys ever played with Lincoln Logs or seen Lincoln Logs before, that's basically what a log cabin is. Or just if you go camping and you see a log cabin, a shape like that is what a log cabin fire looks like. So you have your fuel, and you just start building it up, crisscrossing the sticks. Generally, you would have a lot more wood than this. I was grabbing stuff in my backyard so you guys have a basic example of what it looks like. But you would just crisscross the sticks back and forth, slowly building up a shape sort of like this. And that'll be the log cabin. You would put like your tinder inside, so rip up some newspaper, some cotton balls, paper towels, crumble that up, you put it inside. Don't want to pack it too tightly. Like I said with oxygen before, there is a way you can smother the fire. If you pack in something too tightly, you just have a giant, essentially a block of wood, all the types of wood, and no air can get in. So make sure there's air gaps in whatever type of fire you're building. And that would be like the basic of a log cabin. You would eventually put bigger and bigger stuff on it, but you want to start small first. You never want to start right away with a massive fire. You start with something small and you build up to it. So the next type of fire you could build is a teepee. So you would have, if I can get it to actually stick in the ground, you would have a center stick like this, and you would slowly put around and balancing more sticks around it, more of the kindling and tinder. If you've seen Native Americans' teepees, that's basically the shape you're going with when it comes to the teepee style fire. Be careful not to knock it down. If you don't have the center piece of wood in really tight, it's really easy to knock down. So yeah, you just build up around it, this shape, slowly but surely, and you have a lot more wood than this, and you get it bigger than this, and you would then put any of your tinder in the middle of it in the fire, and you'd start it that way. So the last type of fire you guys can build is a lean-to. So if you guys have been to Camp Sequoia or Deer Lake, any scout camps in our area, or any scout camps in general, you've probably seen a lean-to. It's basically a cabin with only 3 walls and the front section is open. So with a lean-to, you would build it up, and it'd be like a pile of sticks sort of like this, up in front. You'd have them stacking on top of each other the long way, and you'd have the wall a lot higher in front, and you would lay the sticks on the back across it. Now mind you, you would have a lot more wood than this. I'm just using the basic example so I can easily just take it down and show you guys what it looks like. So the pile of wood, I'll use a bigger log just so it's easier. So it'd be pretty high, and you have the sticks laying across it in the back. So I'll just flip it so you guys can see. So you would have this a bit higher up, and you have the sticks laying across the top, like so. And you would put any of your tinder you have underneath, like the other 2 fires. You start the fire that way. Now the last important thing you guys need to know is how to safely be around a fire and how to be around the fire pit and when you're building it. And we'll get to that in just a second. So now that we've got our fire going, there's just some safety stuff you need to know when working around the fire. So there should only be one person in charge of the fire, and that person is the fire warden. So for example, say I'm the fire warden and Mr. Jimmy Scout comes over, wants to start helping with the fire. You should not ever let Mr. Jimmy Scout come over and start working on the fire, because only one person should be in charge of it. If you have more than one person, you might be tripping over yourselves and you might actually get hurt in the fire. So when you put your fire, when it's all set up, you also want to make sure that your fire is in a designated ring. So here we have my fire in my backyard. At scout camps, you might have the fire ring with the boulders around it. You always want to make sure that it's in a specific area where it's designated, or else you might cause harm to the environment. Say you're in the woods somewhere and there is no fire ring, you have to make sure you clear out at least a 10-foot wide area of any leaves, anything that can catch on fire. Make sure it's a perfectly clear space, no leaves like I said before. Then you're able to build your fire there. If you're on a cliff somewhere, it's another good place to make a fire is on a plain, nice cliff of empty rock. You don't have to worry about anything catching fire there, and it's a permeable surface, so you don't have to worry about any damage around it. When you have your fire set up, you also always want to make sure you have water nearby. So just off camera, I have my trusty bucket of water. As you can see, there's plenty of water in here for a fire that size. You also want to make sure you have a source of water nearby, whether it's a stream or a river or anything like that. If you're at your house, a water hose, or if you're at a campsite, you have your bucket of water. It's always good to have it nearby in case the fire gets too big or out of control. If you need to easily put it out, or just at the end of the night you want to put the fire out, you gotta have your water nearby to do it. So say it's getting late out, you're done with your fire. So I'll go ahead and just get this fire out with the water on it. So you want to make sure that the fire is fully out. So right now it's smoking. If I put my hand over it, I can still feel some heat. So the way you know your fire is fully out is if you can't feel any heat whatsoever. Even if it's still smoking, that might be steam or just water coming off of that. So in the case of fire pits at scout camps, stuff like that, you might have a bigger fire and you could actually fill it up fully with water. You're able to stir it in with a bigger stick, and that allows you to get everything wet, everything covered in water, all the hot coals, anything underneath the fire, any of the sticks, just to make sure that it's fully out and fully completely out. So just going back to what I said before about when it comes to camping in the woods, if you're making a fire, you have to make sure you check first at the location that you're going, they allow fires. On the Appalachian Trail, which is in Connecticut and plenty of other states, they don't allow ground fires just because of the chance of a possible forest fire caused by campers. So you have to make sure that the location you're going allows ground fires before you make one. So we have our fire out, put it out with the water, make sure it's all nice and hot and not hot anymore. That's pretty much it for when it comes to fire. So yeah, again, you would just double check, make sure there's no hot coals, anything. Stir it up with water and a stick to make sure everything's wet. And that's basically how you handle your fire. Now, fire is not a toy, but not something you want to play with. So you always have to make sure you safely and properly handle fire. You know what you're doing when you use it. So this is Scouty Steve. Thanks you guys for watching. And make sure to stay safe, stay healthy, and wash your hands. Talk to you later, guys.